Evolution of the Daleks is rather simply a mess. Essentially it fails because it has too much ambition, rather than the complete lack of it. Still, the episode is a mess, full of mismatched ideas and crazy concepts that don't really work especially well within the context of a Dalek episode. It's not too hard to imagine a lot of these elements being recycled into a working story for the show, but the main problem seems to be that none of these elements work especially well with the Daleks. On paper this all sounds pretty impressive. There's a pretty heavy Philip Hinchcliffe vibe to Evolution of the Daleks, which sort of retroactively explains why we wasted so much time at the theatre in Daleks in Manhattan. There's a point about halfway through Evolution of the Daleks where it reveals itself to be an affectionate homage to Frankenstein, not the novel but the 1931 cinematic adaptation from James Whale that's left its mark on popular culture. All the iconography is here. There's a body on the slab awaiting new life, well, thousands of them. There's the use of electricity to animate a lifeless form. There's a monster chained up like a beast. There's a dramatic lightning strike. There's even that familiar lever switch that you don't really see anymore, used to begin the macabre experiment. Okay, the Doctor and Dalek sex stop it declaring it's alive, but that might have been way too obvious. There's nothing wrong with Doctor Who affectionately referencing or blatantly stealing a classic. After all, Philip Hinchcliffe already did this in his own take on Frankenstein in The Brain of Morbius, and that was pretty fantastic. That's to say nothing of the way that Planet of Evil poaches from Jekyll and Hyde, and the talons of Wang Chiang matched up both Fu Manchu and the popular image of Sherlock Holmes. Doctor Who has been doing that sort of pulpy homage for a very long time. Indeed, this episode seems to tease us with the possibility of a Hinchcliffe-inspired story featuring Daleks. The theatre is a bit of a hint here, now appearing to be a callback to Talons of Wen Chiang. Tulu even notes there ain't nothing more creepy than a theatre in the dark. Given that Hinchcliffe's style gave us Genesis of the Daleks, you'd imagine that a Dalek episode produced in the style of the legendary creator would be a surefire hit. Unfortunately, it's far from it. The biggest problem with the whole setup is the Daleks themselves here. Indeed, the episode even opens up with the Doctor acknowledging how thoroughly the Daleks been and diminishing as a threat. Time was 4 Daleks could have conquered the world, but instead just skulking away, hidden in the dark, experimenting. Remember in Dalek when a lone Dalek was enough to threat to destroy Salt Lake City? It seemed like all that work building up the Daleks as a threat to be reckoned with has been completely lost by now. We're not quite at the point where Tom Baker makes jokes of them climbing in Destiny of the Daleks, but we're close. After all, Evolution of the Dalek hinges on the sight of Daleks gossiping in the sewers. There's something quite hilarious about the sight of 2 Daleks whining about their boss while on a work detail. The way that one rotates his eye stalk to make sure their doubts won't be overheard is actually incredibly cute. We also get another gossipy Daleks moment when 2 Daleks exchange knowing glances when the Doctor and Sek agree that Davros was wrong. It's touches like this that make this episode that little bit better for me. These are scenes that aren't really objectively bad. Indeed, I smiled at them a great deal. That's the problem though. After Dalek and the Parting of the Ways in Series 1 worked so hard to establish the Daleks an unstoppable and unreasonable horror, we're suddenly back to the point where they're almost endearing in their crazy Dalek ways. To be honest, Evolution of the Daleks sort of had me imagining a Dalek version of The Office, staffed by the cult of Skaro. It's a fun thought, but it undermines any sense of peril. And then there's the fact that this episode requires Dalek Sek to be an idiot. Even the Doctor realises that other sorts of Daleks are going to stab him in the back, because that is the sort of thing that Daleks do. There's no way this lot are going to let you do it, the Doctor explicitly states. Sek is the leader of the cult of Skaro. Diagras is a natural-born survivor. Neither is a moron, but this script seems to treat the hybrid Sek as an imbecile. Even his dialogue is nonsensical. If you choose death and destruction, he advises his fellow Daleks, then death and destruction will choose you. A lot of Evolution of the Daleks comes off as a cheesy melodrama. The revived, and to be fair, the classic, Doctor Who, have turned the heightened drama into art form. But there are several points where I'm not sure whether Evolution of the Daleks is being blackly comic or overly earnest. I can't help but laugh out loud at Solomon's "Ain't we the same, ain't we all kin" speech, delivered so well by Hugh Koshki, only to be cut off when the Daleks exterminate him. Although I can't help seeing it as a direct copy of when the Sidemen two-parter last year, when the Sidemen kill the President when he pleads with them, just before they kill him, as the Daleks do here with Solomon. Strange one. We also get the 10th Doctor's weird suicidal run, where he urges the Daleks to kill him. Then do it! Do it! Just do it! And I'm not quite sure what to make of this scene. It is, for better or worse, a very 10th Doctor moment. Even comparing Tennant's performance here to Eccleston's Dalek-inspired breakdown in Dalek is a very weird moment. Tennant's moment here isn't as strong as Eccleston's, but he can still knock it out of the park given the right matter. Tennant pretty much holds 42 together by sheer force of will. We'll get to that one in time. However, this scene is something a bit different. Tennant Tennant doesn't really do shouty. This version of the Doctor does quite as well as some of his predecessors, working much better with uncharacteristically quiet Doctor, or excited Doctor, or terrified Doctor. Here, however, his outburst seems quite strange. I mean, what's going on in his head? Is it just having a breakdown? Is this a frustration with the Daleks coming to the forefront? This can't be a way of dealing with the loss of Rose again, can it? It feels like a weirdly selfish moment for the 10th Doctor, as if he's begging to be put out of his misery, of being excused from having to worry about the cosmos and the Daleks and everything else. It seems like he might just want a way out, regardless of the consequences. The Doctor has to realise that the Daleks won't just kill him and go away, right? They kill everyone in Hooverville and reach outwards. If Martha lives, she'll be trapped in the past, but that's okay because her world will never exist. It plays into the idea that Davies really hammered home during the 3rd season that the 10th Doctor is not the most emotionally balanced iteration of the character. While the 9th Doctor had his share of mood changes, the 10th Doctor seems almost manic depressive. This is the sort of high-strung melodrama that we see during his regeneration, The End of Time Part 2. It's very much about presenting the 10th Doctor as a decidedly flawed and unstable character, perhaps even more than his direct predecessor. The whole scene itself is actually very strange. On top of the black comedy of the Daleks exterminating Solomon after his little speech, and the melodrama of the Doctor's death wish, we also get a Simpsons reference from a Dalek. When Sek instructs his soldiers not to exterminate the Doctor, the Dalek seems almost unable to restrain itself. The urge to kill is too strong, it comments, which is a very weird thing to admit publicly, even for a Dalek. So even Lucia Daleks is a bit all over the place, even within particular scenes. Even if you get past the idea that any Dalek would willingly blend with a human, the rest of the episode features with some frankly bizarre Dalek characterizations and applications. It really feels like Helen Rayner was just given a shopping list of items to include, plot points to hit and references to make. It's a complete mess of an episode, and not necessarily in a good way. And strangely, despite all the stuff that it has to do, it feels strangely sort of padded out. Apparently it's not a proper Dalek episode without falling back on the old capture and escape routine, even if it winds up with the characters right back where they started. Evolution of the Dalek starts with the Doctor in Dalek custody. He escapes with his friends and probably gets captured again and brought back to the same underground base. It just seems a bit strange. Also, the script is a little loose in places. There are several points where things don't flow the way they logically should, and instead seem to happen in however way it will most neatly resolve the plot. For example, why does Dalek Khan wait until the Dalek hybrids kill the rest of the Skaro to command destruct on the hybrids? When there are only 3 Daleks in existence, you imagine he'd act a bit quicker, and it's not as if the Daleks exploded with the first shot. Also, why doesn't Dalek Khan shoot the Doctor before disappearing? It's a very glaring plot hole, as the Doctor is standing right there in front of him, and he has enough energy to make an emergency temporal shift. After all, he has to be back for the next big Dalek story. Still, it's not all bad. At least Evolution of the Daleks has some measure of ambition. More than that, though, it also plays well into some of the themes of the 3rd season. Indeed, building off the long game, we've had Daleks manipulating human vices from behind the scenes. However, halfway between that and Last of the Time Lords, we also have the suggestion that perhaps humans aren't quite inherently good, as the Doctor might want to believe. I feel everything we wanted from mankind, Sek remarks to the Doctor at one point, which is ambition, hatred, aggression and war. Such a genius for war. These are all aspects that the Master will exploit in The Last of the Time Lords, working well as a bit of a thematic setup for the grand finale. The Doctor, of course, disputes this as, no, that's not what humanity means. Sek counters quite bluntly, I think it does. At heart, this species is so very Dalek. It's a nice little moment, and a nice moment that suggests perhaps the Doctor can be too optimistic, especially when concerning the human race. So that's not a lot to get out of Evolution of the Daleks, which is probably the weakest Dalek episode of the revived series up to that point. In fact, I'd argue it's at least the weakest episode since Death of the Daleks back in the Tom Baker era. It feels like it was just a collection of too many interesting ideas thrown into a pot together, without any real consideration of how well they work with one another. Still, there's no shortage of ambition here, even in Evolution of the Daleks struggles to juggle everything that it's trying to deal with. However, one excellent touch in this episode is Murray Gold's music. In particular, I like his use of the adaptation of the Dalek theme and the strange creatures together when the Doctor and crew are escaping from the Dalek bunker at the beginning of the episode. Amazing, but a real shame that we never actually saw this released on the Series 3 soundtrack. Certainly one of my favourite unreleased tracks, for sure. Nevertheless,
Report status.
Pain of the flesh, like no Dalek has felt for thousands of years.
The Doctor has escaped.
Then find him! Find him!
Find the Doctor. The prisoners must be recaptured.
Nevertheless, luckily this is one of the last truly terrible first two-parters. The first two-parters of the next 2 years are much stronger. Moffat even has the courtesy to match his much weaker two-part adventure to the second part of his first season, which is nice. Sadly though, there's an iffy Dalek episode or two ahead of us. Actually some that might be a bit worse than this. Overall, while this episode and indeed two-parters certainly isn't the strongest, there are good ideas here, but just ones without the conviction and polish to really succeed. However, there are moments here I simply enjoy, and this is far from the worst Dalek story in all of New Who. I give Daleks in Manhattan a 6.5 out of 10, and the evolution of the Daleks a